What's going on, everybody? Teddy Baldassarre here, and in this video we're going to be looking at an awesome selection of pilot watches, looking at a variety of different ranges, a variety of different styles and price brackets. So how this video is going to be broken down, first looking at different categories, basically just determined by price as being the number one driving factor. So first looking at a collection of watches under $1,000, kind of going for that mid-tier section after that, so kind of up to say $2,000, $2,500, and then looking at $3,000 and above, more of that luxury watch tier. And just for general ground rules in terms of what qualifies for a pilot watch, because I do think it's a little bit open to interpretation, but I think anything with kind of more aviation undertones, also maybe having some design attributes that are just commonly associated with pilots, so say a Flieger style, also a complication that is useful to a pilot, so a GMT, or any other notable feature that be catered towards that of pilots or aviation professionals. And also, given the amount of watches that we could mention here, I'm going to have to cut it off. So if I did miss any of the watches, which I know I'm going to miss, so don't get mad at me, please leave comments down below other watches that other people should consider when looking at pilot watches. And guys, before we jump into this list, I do want to make an announcement for something pretty cool that we just unveiled. So we just unveiled a new section of our website, an authorized pre-owned section. So basically some context on what this is. This is a great place to get discounted rates on watches that we do sell for select brands. How this works and how this is operated. So all the products on this section are going to be at discounted prices. They are of excellent or nearly unworn quality for the brands that we are carrying. So you can get a fantastic watch in great condition at a discounted price. We're actually working directly with the brands. All of these are fully tested and inspected before sending out, and we're the only people that I know that are actually doing this as of right now. All of them also come with a warranty as well to give you additional peace of mind with your purchase. As of right now, we have a few select brands that we are gonna be offering this with, but definitely check it out. Great way to get an awesome watch for a solid price, teddybaldassarre.com. Now to start us out here, I want to look at an affordable price tier and starting off with more of a Flieger style design with Orient actually. Now I know a lot of times when looking at the more affordable price range, I mentioned Laco, and I think that's for good reason. The Laco Aachen as well as the Augsburg, two great options featuring Miota movements inside, I think in this sub $500 range, that should be on people's radars for pilot watches. But when going to a more affordable end, I think Orient is actually doing a great job, and that's pretty much the case for almost every style watch that you're looking out there for Orient. This watch does come on the larger end for size. We're looking at 42 millimeters, 49 millimeter with that lug-to-lug distance, so closer to a 41 millimeter case here, 100 meters of water resistance, which is great. And then you also have an automatic Orient in-house caliber within their F6722 with a mineral crystal. It is around $250, $260 for one of these watches, so not insignificant money on an Orient with a mineral crystal, but certainly of this pilot watch variety, one to definitely look at. Now, next up, we have the Marathon Navigator. Now, this is the aviation style watch from their lineup of military-oriented watches. You're gonna have the G-Star, which is gonna be more for marine activity. You have the General Purpose, which is gonna be their field watch. And then you have the Navigator made specifically for pilots. This watch was actually made as a request from Marathon from the US Armed Forces for a pilot-oriented watch from the brand. It comes with a Swiss course movement within, suitable water resistance, a 41 millimeter case, reasonable compact lug to lug, and has kind of these integrated case crown guard design, which is not gonna be for everybody, but really pulls inspiration from kind of that Benris Type 1 and Type 2. It's also super lightweight, low pressure resistance in the use in the cockpit, and really is a nice beat around watch for, say, a pilot or somebody engaging those type of activities. Now, a brand that was recently put on my radar from a new member of our team, Ben. He is a huge advocate of this brand, and I have to admit, definitely a brand that I think should be considered more in, say, the military watch sphere, as well as in this case, looking at pilot-style watches with Sinn. And today we're gonna be looking at the Sinn Instruments Kinetic 2. So for a little bit of backstory on this brand, they're actually relatively new on the scene, founded by a US Marine Corps Special Operations veteran, and really try to create watches that are representative of their founder and the use cases in which he really underwent during his time in the force. Just a shade under $600 for this watch. The watch is equipped with a Swiss Ronda Quartz GMT movement, but also serves as a capable dive timer, given its rugged build, rotating bezel, and 300 meters of water resistance. And while they can be challenging to get at the price, you can't really do much better for a tactical pilot's watch with real-world combat credibility. Now, when it comes to brands with great credibility in both field watches as well as pilot watches, I think Hamilton is definitely leading the charge as one of the best, say under $1,000. And next, we're gonna be looking at the Hamilton Khaki Aviation Pilot Pioneer Mechanical. Now, this is an homage to the old Hamilton CWC W10 with its case dimensions and overall styling. Its modest size coupled with its faux vintage lume, I think just really makes this watch channel a great deal from the past and doing it tastefully. It features a hand-wound ETA 2801 base movement, but this is actually a modified H50, which basically extends the power reserve to 80 hours and then drops the beat frequency in the process to 21,600 vibrations per hour to maximize the energy stored in that mainspring. But case size, I think, is probably the most notable thing here. 33 millimeters, 36 millimeter lug to lug. But I think the case size factored in with that lug to lug distance is gonna make this one wear certainly on the smaller end of things. Now for this next watch, I certainly think it belongs on this list, but I was hesitant to mention it, not because it wasn't deserving, but just given the fact that it's probably a little bit harder to find nowadays, especially for a consistent price, and that is the Glycine Airman #1. Now, if we're talking about significant pilot style watches, aviation inspired watches, the Glycine Airman certainly needs to be towards the top of the list in terms of what it was able to do and kind of paved the way for many other watches that copied its design or copied it in terms of its use case of tracking an additional time zone. It was developed in the early 1950s and even predated the Rolex GMT Master 2. This particular one comes in a very traditional size of 40 millimeters, which I think will work on a variety of different wrists, 49 millimeter lug to lug, and an automatic SW330 within with a sapphire crystal. There are a variety of different options out there if you want to look at different Airmen. I think just in general for the Airman, it really doesn't matter what specific model you go for. I just think the history behind this piece, what it represents in the marketplace for pilot style watches is just too much to possibly overlook for a video like this. So I think anyone that really sits well with you is certainly one to consider. Now next up we have Citizen with their ProMaster Skyhawk AT. Now Citizen underneath this $1,000 price range is really beloved by pilots, and I know that firsthand by having many friends that are pilots as well as some close family members that are also pilots, and they love their Citizen watches. This one here packs in a lot of the common attributes that you'll see from Citizen watches with their eco-drive quartz within, kind of the set it and forget it. So quartz oscillating with that accuracy while harnessing solar power in the process. Now the Skyhawk series overall is a descendant of the original Navihawk and is an analog digital feature-rich eco-drive powered pilot's watch built to complement the unique needs for a pilot during flight. It syncs with a local atomic clock and tracks a wide range of timekeeping features, including a world time, 2 alarms, a 1/100th of a second chronograph, a countdown timer, and much more. And when you factor in the 200 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal, this one's gonna have great durability in the process while offering up many features as well. Now looking at $1,000, and this watch really does kind of fluctuate depending on what variant you go for, where you're buying it around the world, the exchange rate, but that is the Stova Flieger Classic. So I reviewed the 40 millimeter Stova Flieger Classic in the past. Definitely one of the better Flieger watches that you can get for the money out there on the market. Stova being one of the original 5 producing Flieger style watches back in the day in World War II, does have some just credibility in this department. This particular version is what we would call a Type A style Flieger, so really kind of the original, offering simple legibility with its black glossy dial, stark markers. Case size is gonna be 40 millimeters for the variant that I reviewed, 48.6 millimeter lug to lug, reasonable thickness, and a solid automatic at a 2824 within with a sapphire crystal. This is a watch that can pretty much take on every situation, whether it's in the cockpit or on the ground. Now, as you start to get up market a little bit around that $2,000 price range, there's a lot of brands as well as watches that get thrown into the mix in terms of this pilot watch category. And the watch that we're gonna be looking at here is definitely more straightforward in its design, and I think that could be both a positive or a negative depending on what you're going for, but we're looking at the Oris Big Crown Pro Pilot. Now these watches come in a variety of dial colors as well as case sizes. I think the 41 millimeter option is kind of that happy middle ground in terms of what I think a lot of people will go for. It does have a dial presence that is going to allow it to stay true to I think what pilot watches need to have, which is a large dial, highly legible with its markers, but also with that 48.6 millimeter lug to lug is gonna wear rather compact, everything considered. 100 meters of water resistance, making this one a great wearer in a variety of different environments, so you kind of have that water resistance to fall back on. But given the fact that many pilot watches sometimes are busy just for busy's sake, I think this is a nice change of pace. The next one is a watch that I have slated up for review probably pretty soon, and one that I've been kind of mentioning quite a bit, but it's just because I really love the look of this watch, and that is the Sinn 105 UTC. Now this is starting to get up in a price range where you're starting to get into the world of true GMT movements and things at your disposal there, but it's still in a price range where I think it can be appealing to many people out there, and you're also getting some Sinn up tech in the process. So $2,100, not insignificant, but I think in the range for a GMT watch from Sinn that definitely is in play. Also 41mm case and a 47.4mm lug to lug. If you are familiar with, say, the Sinn 104, this is gonna wear very similar to that, almost matches those dimensions, maybe a little bit larger in terms of the lug to lug distance. Water resistance 200 meters, that's definitely an area where Sinn never seems to skimp out. And an automatic top grade or a chronometer equivalent SW330 within. Also features a tegimented rotating bezel along the outside. So tegimented is basically Sinn's proprietary case treatment that they're offering up on their watches, upping the hardness on their cases and really resisting those scratches in the process. All right, so now looking at watches above $3,000. So I'd probably classify these as luxury watches here. And I think the first one I want to look at is definitely one of the more basic options that you can certainly go for in this range, and that is with the Tudor Black Bay GMT. Now, as soon as this one was released, I think there was a lot of buzz around this watch in terms of what it was going for, and I think it helped just further cement the Black Bay collection as being one of the leaders in its price category. I did a review of this one alongside the Planet Ocean GMT a few years back, and it's definitely a dated video, but certainly could be one that might be interesting for some people out there because it might be two watches you might be considering. Now, this watch I think was a standout all around, being a great alternative to the Rolex GMT Master 2, but I think the thickness on this one definitely deterred some buyers from looking in its direction. But otherwise, across the board, I think you're getting a great piece. 41mm, 50mm lug to lug, so wearing pretty true to that 41mm case size. Water resistance of 200 meters is definitely an added benefit. And you're getting an automatic in-house MT 5652 movement. It's cost certified. There was rumblings and issues with this movement earlier on. It seems as if Tudor has corrected this. When I actually reviewed this watch, I had it for just a few weeks and didn't have any issues, so I can only really speak to that, but certainly a watch that needs to be in the mix here. Now, I think when you try to do everything for everybody, typically you fall short as a brand and a manufacturer, especially in watches. But one brand that kind of manages to do it pretty well is Omega, and I don't think they necessarily make any compromises in the process. I think the world of pilot watches from Omega probably doesn't have the same level of offering as some of their other collections, especially towards the diver category. But here we're going to be looking at the Omega Speedmaster Skywalker X33. Now this is probably one of the more unique Speedmasters out there on the market. For one, it's offering a Quartz Omega 5619 movement within. So this is a thermocompensated multifunctional quartz movement with special functions being tested by the European Space Agency, the ESA. It features analog hands and an LCD display, so something you don't see on an Omega every day. It allows for tracking 3 additional time zones, features a chronograph, of course, MET, mission elapsed time, phase elapsed time, 3 alarms, and a perpetual calendar. And this watch is a descendant of the original X33 series, which was designed in collaboration with NASA and is still used by many of their astronauts today. The watch comes in a 45mm titanium case, reasonable lug to lug distance, and a Speedmaster with even more pilot undertones than normal. Now for these last 3 watches, I think these are the 3, in terms of a luxury watch perspective, the 3 watches that I consider as the epitome of a luxury pilot's watch. Now first, I want to look at the Breitling Navitimer B01. And I think it's really safe to say that few brands rival Breitling's history in terms of making watches for pilots, and even fewer watches can rival the Navitimer's legitimacy as one of the premier watches for pilots on the market. In fact, the Navitimer was so synonymous and crucial to flying that the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association adopted the Navitimer as its official watch. And I think another thing that really helps the Navitimer is, for the most part, unlike a lot of other Breitling watches, I think its design has not changed as much as many other collections. The watch is going to be featuring Breitling's automatic B01 caliber within, which I've covered on the channel. It's a fully in-house chronograph movement, column wheel, vertical clutch system, lot to like, and typically you can find these for pretty good deals on the pre-owned market, so definitely a great option to go for someone trying to get into a pilot style watch with great history. Now the next watch in our big 3 here is the Rolex GMT Master 2, the 126710. You can go for the BLNR version, you can go for the Pepsi version. It really is up to you. And I know the games that are being played here in terms of getting these at retail, so I don't want to belabor that point too much. But in terms of pilot watches, I don't think really gets much better than the GMT Master 2. And from my opinion, is probably still one of the best watches that Rolex makes, next to probably the Rolex Explorer 214, 270, is probably my two top watches that Rolex is currently making in their catalog, and I think really do stand the test of time quite a bit. Now, I did a video in the past where I actually went to Bob's Watches. We basically laid out on a table pretty much almost every GMT Master reference over the years, starting with the 6542, moving all the way up to the present day. So if you've not seen that video, I will link to it down below. It's definitely a helpful breakdown of looking at the just kind of evolution of the GMT Master family of watches. This particular one featuring the new in-house caliber, the 3285. You can get it on a Jubilee bracelet as well, which I think does really complement the style of this watch and what it's going for. I personally like it more in the Jubilee. I know there's a lot of people that will absolutely disagree with me on that, but just personal opinion there. But doesn't really get more classic in this from a pilot watch perspective. Now to round us out, we go to Schaffhausen with the IWC Big Pilot. Now very similar to the GMT Master 2 as well as the Breitling Navitimer, I think this is of that premium echelon of pilot watches that you could really throw into the mix. You also can throw the Breguet Type 20 in here as well as being a well-suitable option for this price range, but I needed to make the cutoff somewhere, and I think the Big Pilot is just very synonymous with this style of watch. Large case size on these watches, but in terms of the original use case of these original navigator and pilot style watches, during World War II, many of them extending out to 55 millimeters. I think this is one of those instances where you have to consider the use case and what the history behind this piece and this manufacturer is really going for. Inside is an IWC 52110 caliber, certainly a grail-worthy pilot watch from a great manufacturer. But all right, guys, that is going to conclude this video. I know I couldn't mention all the watches again, so I needed to make the cutoff somewhere. Please leave comments down below of other watches that you'd want to include. And if you did enjoy the video, please thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's a great way to just help out the content. If you did enjoy it too, great indicator for us to what you want to see in the future. Also, definitely check out TeddyBaldassarre.com in that authorized pre-owned section. Definitely think you guys will find something that you're interested in. Also, definitely follow me on Instagram to stay up to date with the content, as well as see some awesome photos of watches. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.